My name is Alex Morgan. I am 58 years old, the eldest child of my family, and for the better part of 2 decades, I've run a home renovation business in New England. People in the community know me as dependable, the sort who shows up early at the job site, pays employees on time, and still volunteers on Sunday afternoons at the church scholarship fund. I never thought of myself as remarkable. I only tried to be steady. Steady, it turns out, was not enough for the people closest to me. It all came crashing down one cold November evening, the kind of night where frost clings to the windows and laughter seems to echo longer in the dining room. I had gathered everyone for what was supposed to be a simple holiday dinner. Roast turkey, potatoes, cranberry sauce, the usual spread. My parents were there, my younger sibling Casey, and of course my partner Riley. Riley had been in my life for almost a decade. Younger, energetic, obsessed with fitness and appearances, Riley loved to post photos of smoothies and gym sessions to social media. I thought it was harmless vanity. Maybe it was my mistake to confuse exhibition with loyalty. We had barely passed the rolls when Riley stood glass in hand and tapped for attention. Everyone hushed, waiting for a toast. Riley smiled at me in a way I now know was calculated. "I want you all to hear it from me," Riley said, voice ringing clear. "I've found my real future. I'm moving in with Theo, my trainer. And yes, there's a baby on the way." My fork clattered against the china. But Riley wasn't done. Looking straight at me, Riley added, "You were only a bridge until I found the right harbor." The room went silent, save for Casey's gasp and my father's awkward cough. I sat there, heat rushing into my face, yet not a single word escaped my lips. For years, I had believed silence was weakness. That night, silence was my shield. I lifted my glass, nodded, and said, "Only congratulations." Inside, my chest burned as though someone had branded me. I kept my dignity at that table, but the humiliation cut deeper than any insult I'd endured. What stung most wasn't the betrayal itself, but the public nature of it. Riley knew exactly what was at stake. The diamond ring purchased 6 weeks earlier, the electric card jointly registered the access Riley had to every subscription, every card, even the alarm system code to the million-plus home I had worked my whole life to pay down. And hanging over it all was my late mother's estate worth nearly $1.8 million preserved in a trust Riley had always assumed would one day help us both. Riley must have thought that by declaring this new life so boldly, the family would rally around and pressure me into support. But humiliation has a strange power. It sharpens memory, turns each kindness you once offered into a ledger of unpaid debts. That night, after everyone drifted home and Riley left with Theo's car waiting at the curb, I walked through my own house switching locks on doors. I removed Riley's name from the vehicle title, canceled the additional credit card, and reset the security system. I called the bank and froze joint accounts, then filed every email, every receipt into a folder on my desk. Paper never forgets. In the morning, my phone buzzed with messages from relatives, some shocked, others oddly amused. Casey wrote, "You'll bounce back, you always do." My aunt texted, "At least Riley was honest about leaving." Honest, I thought? No, this was cruelty disguised as confession. It would have been easy to lash out to post some angry status online, or drive to the motel where I suspected Riley was staying. But something inside me shifted that night. I understood that true power was not in raising my voice, but in preparing the quiet, irrefutable answer. As I sipped black coffee at my kitchen table, I whispered to myself, "Let them laugh now. The paper will laugh last." If you've ever been dismissed by your own family, share your story in the comments so I know I'm not alone. The thing about families is that favoritism rarely begins in adulthood. It starts in small, quiet ways: who gets the extra scoop of ice cream, who is excused from chores, who is forgiven for debts. By the time we reach middle age, those patterns are so ingrained that they feel like natural law. My younger sibling Casey was always the favored one. Casey is 46 now, but even at childhood birthdays, you could see the tilt of attention. If I came home with a report card of straight A's, the family clapped politely. If Casey managed a C in algebra, the table erupted with cheers and promises of ice cream. Adulthood didn't change the script. I became the dependable one, the one with steady income, the one who owned property, the one who paid bills without asking for loans. Casey was the struggler, the dreamer, forever one paycheck away from collapse. Yet somehow collapse always brought sympathy and bailouts. I was told, "You're responsible, Alex, you'll understand." Casey was told, "You're doing your best, dear." That pattern shaped my relationship with Riley, too. Riley knew how to lean into family pity. While I shouldered the mortgage, the business payroll, and the costs of my parents' prescriptions, Riley floated through life with personal trainers and endless wellness programs. I paid for the boutique gym membership. I funded the summer vacation to coastal Maine, where Riley posted sunlit selfies with captions like gratitude vibes. At first, I didn't mind. When you care for someone, you don't count receipts. But over time, the imbalance grew too loud to ignore. Riley never bought groceries without asking me to reimburse. When the washer broke, Riley texted me the invoice with the words, "Handle this, please." At dinner, Riley would raise a glass and joke, "To Alex, the family banker." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, but it wasn't joy. It was self-preservation. Life in our neighborhood made the contrast sharper. We live under a strict homeowners association, the kind where grass height is measured and holiday decorations have to come down by the second week of January. Every Sunday morning, I'd sit in the pews of the local church listening to the pastor remind us that pride comes before the fall. On Sunday evenings, I'd meet older friends at the bowling club. We talked about aching joints, not Instagram followers. My world was built on steady rhythms. Riley's was built on appearances. And then came the fitness obsession. For months, Riley trained with Theo, the so-called wellness coach. I thought nothing of it at first. Theo was just another name in the long list of instructors. Riley cycled through yoga, 1 year Pilates the next, then some juice cleanse guru. But this time was different. Riley started skipping dinner, returning late with flushed cheeks and evasive explanations. Credit card statements told the story hundreds spent on elite sessions. I remember one evening in August. I'd returned home early from a site inspection, tired but satisfied. Riley was already there, sitting on the couch with a grin I hadn't seen in months. On the coffee table lay a receipt for a luxury weekend retreat. Riley tried to hide it, but I caught the logo Theo's boutique fitness brand. "It's networking," Riley said, waving a manicured hand. "Theo thinks I could help manage events." I nodded, but inside a thread began to snap. I didn't confront Riley then. Instead, I quietly saved each receipt, every email confirmation, and every training invoice. I even kept the parking stubs Riley left in the car console, each one timestamped near Theo's studio. Silence, I reminded myself, is power. Family dynamics made things worse. Casey, who never managed money well, often asked me for help. Once, Casey pleaded for me to co-sign a loan to cover overdue taxes. Another time, it was just a bridge loan until my bonus arrives. The bonus never arrived, and the loan became my responsibility. Our parents excused Casey every time. "You have the house, Alex. You'll be fine. Casey just needs a chance." When Riley began echoing that same sentiment, "You'll be fine, Alex. You have savings, you have property," I realized the chorus had merged. To them, I was not a person with limits. I was an institution, a vault they could dip into whenever life grew inconvenient. I held my tongue. I kept attending Sunday dinners, kept writing checks, kept smiling through the subtle digs, but resentment has a way of fermenting. And one day it bursts. That day came not with an explosion, but with a whisper of gossip. A cousin shared a story that spread like wildfire. At a local cafe, Riley had been overheard laughing with Theo, saying Alex thinks responsibility is attractive, but really it's boring. Who wants to live with a walking checkbook? When I heard those words, my throat tightened. It wasn't just betrayal, it was ridicule broadcast to strangers in a public space. And soon enough, it landed on social media. A mutual acquaintance posted a vague update. "Some people think loyalty means paying for everything." Sad. Comments flowed speculating about me without naming me. But I knew. Everyone in our circle knew. That was the moment I understood. I was no longer simply humiliated in private. I had been branded publicly as the fool, the walking checkbook. But what they didn't know was that while they mocked me, I was already building my case. I had months of receipts, statements, and screenshots stored in folders. My mother's trust documents sat in a fireproof safe. Every lock on the house had been changed. Every shared account closed. I was not powerless. I was patient. It would take time, but I would show them. Right then, staring at those words on the glowing phone screen, I felt calm. Humiliation had sharpened into clarity. Riley and Casey might still believe they held the family's sympathy. They might think the court of public opinion was on their side. But the court of paper of law and of evidence, that court was mine. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to shout. All I had to do was wait. And when the time came, I would speak not with words but with proof. Public humiliation has a way of multiplying. Once one person dares to laugh at you openly, others follow like birds swooping after the first crumb. The real blow came during my niece's graduation. Family gathered in the school parking lot a bright May morning, full of speeches and balloons. I had brought flowers for the graduate, a proud bouquet wrapped in gold paper. While I was leaning against my car, Riley appeared in front of a cluster of relatives, Theo by their side. Riley looked me straight in the eye, smirked, and declared loudly enough for everyone around to hear. "Alex doesn't know how to live. All they care about are bills and receipts. Who wants to spend their life with a human calculator?" Laughter erupted. Some of it was nervous, but most of it was genuine. My niece shifted uncomfortably, clutching her diploma tighter. A cousin pulled out their phone, catching the exchange on video. Before the day ended, that clip was posted on Facebook. The caption read, "When your ex is more boring than algebra." The comments burned, "Ouch. Can confirm Alex never tips big." Imagine living like that. It didn't matter that I had covered Riley's gym memberships or that I had once bailed Casey out of tax trouble. None of that counted. What counted was the spectacle. Me standing silent, mocked like a relic, while Riley basked in sympathy. I drove home that afternoon with my jaw locked so tight it ached. But I didn't shout. I didn't post a rebuttal. Instead, I printed the screenshots and slid them into the folder already thick with evidence. Paper never forgets. The humiliation kept rolling. At Sunday dinner the next week, Casey leaned across the table and whispered just loud enough for everyone to hear. Maybe Riley just wanted a partner who actually knows how to have fun. My father chuckled. My mother shook her head with mock pity, and Riley's absence at the table was treated like some noble sacrifice. I realized then that the family no longer saw me as a person. I was a stage prop, the dull foil against which Riley's drama sparkled. But humiliation never arrives alone. It invites chaos. Within days, I received a call from my credit card company. Someone had tried to use the canceled card at a luxury hotel. The attempt failed, but the alert was clear Riley was testing boundaries. Then came the bank's notification, multiple attempts at accessing an account that had already been closed. I felt my stomach knot, not from fear, but from grim recognition. Riley was desperate. And desperation makes people reckless. One evening, Casey called, voice dripping with false concern. Look, Alex, everyone's worried about you. Riley says you've been cold and unforgiving. Maybe it's time to sit down, talk it out, and support them. After all, they're expecting a child. The implication was clear. Support them meant open the vault. I simply replied, Casey, boundaries exist for a reason, and hung up. That weekend, as if to mock me further, Riley posted a picture online, a sonogram photo with the caption, building a future with love. The comments flowed with hearts and blessings. I stared at that image, not knowing whether it was truth or manipulation. What I did know was that Riley was crafting a narrative, a poor, abandoned partner left to fend for themselves, while the cold, wealthy Alex hoarded resources. The manipulation worked on some relatives. My aunt called, voice sharp. How could you let Riley struggle like this? They gave you the best years of their life. And now, with a baby on the way, you're just sitting on that big house and fat inheritance? I wanted to scream that Riley had walked out on me. That Riley had mocked me in public, drained accounts, and slept in another man's bed. But instead, I bit my tongue. Silence again became my shield. Because what they didn't know was that Theo's wife had started sending me emails. Polite at first, then pointed. She attached screenshots of late-night messages, financial requests. Riley had made even hotel confirmations under Theo's name. The subject line of one email still rings in my head. You deserve to know the full picture. That was my first real glimpse into the fracture lines of Riley's new future. Theo was not free. Theo had a marriage, a career in healthcare, and a reputation to maintain. Riley wasn't building a love story. They were staging a coup, gambling with reputations and wallets. The irony made me smile for the first time in months. Still, the humiliation wasn't done with me yet. At another family gathering, this time a cousin's birthday, Riley arrived uninvited, carrying balloons. They stood at the head of the table and announced, Alex threw me out, can you believe it? After everything I sacrificed, I'm left living in motels. The room gasped, eyes turning toward me as if I were the villain. Someone muttered, heartless. Another whispered, rich people forget compassion. I sat there, fork in hand, calm as stone. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply took a sip of water, excused myself, and drove home. Because while Riley and the others chased drama in living rooms and Facebook feeds, I had a thicker weapon building quietly in my study, files, receipts, emails, call logs. And I knew something they didn't. The trust left by my late mother contained a clause buried in legal phrasing that Riley had never bothered to read. It stated that any spouse or partner who failed to sign a prenuptial agreement forfeited all rights to inheritance. Riley had never signed one. They couldn't touch a cent of that $1.8 million. But I wasn't ready to reveal that yet. No, humiliation still had work to do. Let Riley dance on the stage a little longer. Let the family fawn and gossip. Each word they threw was another line of evidence, another nail in a coffin Riley was building with their own hands. I will tell you about the first piece of undeniable proof, the letter that arrived in my mailbox soon. For now, just know, this silence may look like surrender, but in reality, it is the deep breath before the storm. The turning point did not arrive with a shout or a scandal in a crowded room. It arrived with the steady thump of the mail carrier's footsteps and a plain envelope slipped through my door slot. I remember the moment vividly. It was a Wednesday morning. The house was quiet, the only sound, the hum of the furnace and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. I brewed my coffee, sorted the pile of circulars and bills, and then saw it my name handwritten on the front, the return address Riley's. Inside were 3 pages thick with accusations and pleas. Riley wrote that I had abandoned them, that I was responsible for housing, counseling, and shared expenses. They insisted that as the primary earner, I owed them continuing support. The final line struck me hardest. You made a promise to take care of me, and now you are legally and morally bound to follow through. I sat at the kitchen table, letter spread before me, steam curling from my mug. Once upon a time, those words might have broken me. This time I reached for a pen and scrawled across the margin Evidence A. Then I slid the pages into my growing folder. It wasn't just the letter. That same week, two more pieces of the puzzle arrived. First, an email from Theo's wife. This time, no polite introduction. Attached were screenshots of text conversations between Riley and Theo. Messages about meeting in hotels, about Alex, never noticing about bank transfers Riley hoped to wring from me. One line made my stomach tighten. Once the estate money is freed, we'll be set. Second, a call from my bank. The representative's voice was cautious. Mr. Morgan, there have been repeated attempts to use a deactivated card ending in 479. Do you recognize these? I didn't need to ask who it was. Each incident was a blow, but also a gift. Paper does not argue. Paper proves. I retrieved my late mother's will and trust documents from the fireproof safe. I had read them before, but never with such care. There it was in black ink. Any partner or spouse of mine must sign a prenuptial agreement to access the estate. Failure to do so redirected the assets into a scholarship fund for local students. Riley had never signed. They had always brushed off the suggestion with a laugh. That's for people who don't trust love, they once said. Love, it turned out, had a clause. For days I carried the knowledge in silence. Family still whispered behind my back. My father muttered that I was cold. Casey texted late at night urging me to do the right thing. Riley posted vague updates online, painting themselves as the victim of a ruthless ex. I let them. Because what they didn't know was that the foundation beneath their performance was crumbling. I met with my lawyer, a calm woman named Janine who had handled my business contracts for years. I laid the folder on her desk: letters, emails, screenshots, bank alerts, and the trust documents. She flipped through them with the steady patience of someone accustomed to messy lives boiled down into neat exhibits. When she looked up, she smiled faintly. Alex, you've already done most of my work. This is airtight. Her words were not triumphant, but they were solid. I left her office lighter than I had felt in months. Still, humiliation had not finished its course. At the next Sunday dinner, Riley appeared again, belly prominent, and announced, Alex left me with nothing. Imagine being thrown aside while carrying a child. The table gasped. My aunt pressed a hand to her mouth. Casey glared at me with open disgust. I set down my fork, looked at Riley calmly, and said, thank you for sharing. Then I rose, placed a 20 on the table for my meal, and walked out. Gasps followed me, but I did not turn back. Because the real confrontation was no longer in dining rooms. It was on paper in offices, in the quiet spaces where truth could not be twisted by pity. At home that night, I organized my documents into binders. One labeled financial, another personal, a third legal. Each page slipped into plastic sleeves, time-stamped and undeniable. I thought of my mother then. She had always told me, Alex, silence is not weakness. It is strength waiting for its time. For the first time, I understood. The silence was almost over. But before I tell you about the night I turned the tables completely, let me ask you something. How do you think they'll react when the truth lands? Drop your thoughts, I'm reading. Counterattacks are best served not with fury, but with precision. And my chance came at a place Riley never expected: a community fundraising dinner. It was late spring, one of those evenings when the air smells of cut grass and lilacs. The town hall was decorated with white lights, tables lined with silent auction items, and a stage where local leaders made speeches about generosity. I had been invited as a donor. Weeks earlier, I'd redirected the money once set aside for Riley's dream wedding into a scholarship fund in my mother's name. $500,000 earmarked for students in need. When the host called my name to the stage, I felt the weight of every humiliation pressing behind me. Riley's smirks, Casey's whispers, the Facebook comments that branded me cold. I stepped forward and announced, voice steady, this fund will honor my mother's belief that education is the only inheritance that truly multiplies. Applause broke out. Cameras clicked. Local media filmed a segment that would run on the evening news. Somewhere in the crowd, Riley's face blanched. For years, they had spun the tale of a cold, selfish Alex. Now the story was rewritten in headlines. Local business owner donates $500,000 to students. That night, for the first time, I watched Riley lose control of the narrative. But humiliation has a long memory, and Riley did not give up easily. Weeks later, I was served with papers, an attempt to claim palimony financial support for a non-married partner. Riley demanded ongoing payments, citing emotional labor and lost opportunities. What they didn't know was that I had been preparing for this all along. Every asset of mine, the house, the business, even the cars, was held under a limited liability company transferred years earlier at my lawyer's advice. The trust documents were clear. Riley had no entitlement without a prenuptial agreement. And thanks to their own reckless emails, I had proof that money was the only future they envisioned. My lawyer Janine flipped through the papers Riley's attorney had filed, then calmly said, "This will be dismissed before it warms the judge's bench." Still, the twist arrived not from the courtroom, but from Theo's household. Theo's wife insisted on a DNA test before the baby's birth. The results landed like a hammer. Theo was the father. The same Theo who had once sworn to Riley that he'd leave his marriage. He didn't. Instead, his lawyer sent Riley an offer of minimal support and a draft custody schedule. Riley's grand narrative of a romantic escape collapsed into cold legal terms. And because their own messages had painted me as the walking checkbook, they found themselves with no sympathy left to cash. Casey, once Riley's loudest defender, fell silent. Neighbors stopped whispering about my supposed cruelty. Instead, they whispered about Riley's recklessness. But the true twist was one Riley never saw coming. Months earlier, while Riley flaunted their new life, I had been quietly moving pieces into place. I restructured the company, transferred deeds, updated wills, revoked powers of attorney Riley didn't even know existed. Every signature was notarized, every timestamp precise. The night Riley tried to claim the car in their name, the dealership informed them it had already been reassigned. When they demanded their share of the home, the title search revealed it belonged solely to the LLC. Piece by piece, every imagined right dissolved. One evening, I came across a screenshot Riley had foolishly posted online. In a rant to a friend, they wrote, "Alex thinks silence means weakness. They'll cave once I show them the world is on my side." Reading it, I almost laughed. Silence had not been weakness. It had been my sharpest weapon. Because silence allowed me to prepare while Riley shouted. Silence let me build a fortress of paper while Riley burned bridges in public. Silence turned every insult into evidence. By the time the court dismissed Riley's claim, they were living out of a borrowed guest room at Casey's, their once bright future with Theo reduced to legal disputes and child support negotiations. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. At a follow-up meeting, Janine closed the binder and said, "Alex, you played this exactly right. Not through noise. Through order." And I thought back to that holiday dinner months ago when Riley stood at the head of the table and declared me nothing more than a bridge. Bridges may be walked upon, but they also outlast storms. I will tell you about the aftermath, what became of Riley of Casey, and of my family's shifting loyalties soon. But for now, remember, this revenge does not always roar. Sometimes it signs documents, quietly stamps them with dates, and lets the silence do the talking. The room is quiet again. Months have passed since the shouting matches, the Facebook rants, the slammed doors. What remains is not noise, but the subtle rearrangement of lives. Riley no longer drives the luxury car they once flaunted. It was repossessed, rolled away on a flatbed one morning while neighbors watched. The same neighbors who used to whisper that I was heartless now shake their heads and murmur, "What a waste." Riley rents a small room back at their parents' house, a far cry from the sprawling estate they once pictured. Casey, too, has changed tone. The sibling who once accused me of cruelty now avoids confrontation, suddenly cautious. Perhaps they fear their own missteps will someday meet the same paper trail. Silence from me has become a boundary they respect, even if grudgingly. Theo, his marriage splintered in public. Court documents became local gossip. His wife pursued separation, demanding accountability for the child he had with Riley. The man who once promised Riley a glamorous escape is now locked in custody disputes and financial oversight. And me, I live in the same house, though. It feels different now, lighter, protected. My company runs smoothly, the staff loyal. I pour energy into the scholarship fund, where I watch young people step toward futures. Riley once thought they could snatch for themselves. I even began seeing someone new, a fellow business owner with their own savings, their own independence. Someone who knows the value of partnership without expectation of a vault behind it. But here is what hasn't changed. I still keep records. I still file receipts into binders. I still believe that silence paired with paper outlasts noise. The boundary that saved me was simple. Never allow entitlement to write checks against your future. My mother's trust, her foresight turned into my shield. And the lawyer, the clerks, even the bank staff who flagged suspicious attempts, they were the quiet allies who helped steady the ground beneath me. When I look back on those nights, the holiday dinner, humiliation, the parking lot jeers, the Facebook ridicule, I no longer feel heat rising in my face. Instead, I feel clarity. They were loud because they thought noise creates truth. I was silent because I knew truth sits in documents waiting to be read. So what is the moral boundary save time? Records cut noise. Calm wins. The family still meets for dinners, though I attend less often. When I do, I keep my words few. No one dares suggest I should pay Riley's bills or Casey's debts. The silence between us is boundary enough. And as for Riley, I sometimes see their name pop up on social media, cryptic posts about betrayal, about starting over, about dreams deferred. I don't comment. I don't even linger. Because the story they tried to write about me has already been erased by their own actions. Still, I know life rarely ends with a clean period. Custody battles stretch on. Family ties fray and tangle. The story hasn't fully ended. It simply shifted beyond my doorstep. And maybe that's the lesson: you don't have to win every war. You only have to walk away with your boundaries intact. Do you think I did the right thing or went too far? Leave your take below. I'll read every single comment. The house is quiet now. The car keys are back in my drawer, the failed claims dismissed, and the estate remains exactly where my mother intended it. I still work late nights, still keep every receipt filed in binders, still live small and steady. We kept one rule: no entitlement without boundaries. The paper did the rest. My mother's trust, clause 12. Thanks to Janine, my lawyer, who filed every motion on record, to the bank clerks who flagged suspicious charges, and to the county office that stamped the deeds without fuss. The moral is simple. Boundaries save time, records cut noise, calm wins. What would you have done first? Call, file, or walk away? Tell me in the comments, tap subscribe, and come back this weekend for the next story. Details changed. This channel isn't legal advice. We'll keep it clean. Do you think I did the right thing or went too far? Leave your take below. I'll read every single comment. The house is quiet now. The car keys are back in my drawer, the failed claims dismissed, and the estate remains exactly where my mother intended it. I still work late nights, still keep every receipt filed in binders, still live small and steady. We kept one rule: no entitlement without boundaries. The paper did the rest. My mother's trust, clause 12. Thanks to Janine, my lawyer, who filed every motion on record, to the bank clerks who flagged suspicious charges, and to the county office that stamped the deeds without fuss. The moral is simple. Boundaries save time, records cut noise, calm wins. What would you have done first? Call, file, or walk away? Tell me in the comments, tap subscribe, and come back this weekend for the next story. Details changed. This channel isn't legal advice. We'll keep it clean.